Freeland, why is most of cabinet lighting up behind your rival instead of you?
Thank you for the question, and I'm really glad to be here today to be meeting with my caucus colleagues. I am so grateful to the colleagues who have been supporting me. I want to highlight, I'm especially grateful to the people who bring the caucus together, do the hard work in our caucus, the workhorses of our caucus. I'm really glad to have the support of the current Ontario Caucus Chair, Michael Coteau, the former Ontario Caucus Chair, Jamie Maloney, the Quebec Caucus Chair, Stéphane Lauzon, the Chair of Women's Caucus, Leah Taylor-Roy. And for me, a huge emphasis is going to be reviving the party, reviving the grassroots of the party, reviving a real democratization process in the party. We can never again be in a position where the leader is the only person who decides who the leader is. And I think Liberal Party grassroots members and caucus need to have a greater say in what we do and how we do it.
But at the end of the day, it's up to caucus members to decide that. I would certainly encourage my colleagues to wait for the race to get underway a little bit to know what everybody stands for and what we're putting forward. But what I can say is I'm getting calls from people right across the country who are joining the party, sometimes for the first time or rejoining because they're excited about it, about me running. So at the end of the day, it's one member, one vote. And my job as one of the candidates, like all of us, is to convince Liberal members that we're the best person for the job.
You see, it looks like a movement of the party establishment to run for Mr. Carney, and you seem to be getting a lot of younger people.
Yeah.
That kind of leaves Miss Freeland out in the cold, doesn't it?
Well, look, it's up to all of us to convince people that we're the right person for the job. And I have to say, like, I am so buoyed by the support that I'm getting from young people across the country. But, Bob, it's not just young people. I'm hearing from people of every generation, every background who really feel hopeful about the fact that I'm running and feel hopeful for the first time about the future of the country in a long time. And that's something that makes me excited, too.
Why are so many ministers lining up behind Mark Carney and not your former deputy prime minister?
It was a difficult choice. I have a lot of respect for all three candidates. I thought that it was important because of the threat that we're facing when it comes to the U.S. tariffs, that we have somebody that has been able to weather big crises such as the 2008 crisis and also the Brexit crisis. It is not only dealing with Trump, it is also to have a vision for the economy, to support Canadian workers across the country and to protect livelihoods, and that's why he has my
last question. Freeland guided Canada through the first NAFTA renegotiations and also was the finance minister for several years. Are you saying she doesn't have what it takes to guide Canada through the next Trump administration and have a vision for the economy?
I think she did a great job during CUSMA, and I've had a lot of I have a lot of respect for my colleague Freeland, and I really hope that we can continue to work together as we are all working on making sure that we can weather the storm that is coming from the U.S.
Who are you endorsing in the leadership campaign? Everybody wants that.
I appreciate the question. I'm very happy and excited to be here with all of our caucus colleagues, and will very much be focusing on we need to come out of this Liberal leadership with a strong caucus in place to fight the next election. That's the most important thing, because we know that what we're fighting for are programs that help families, that help children, that help the elderly,
So who's your
and the
unity candidate?
most vulnerable in our society. That's why I ran for public office,
So who's
and
your
that's
unity
what I'll
candidate?
continue to do.
But do you need
That's
more
it.
for it, or is the Trump response more
Who's
for
your
it?
unity candidate?
Actually, I'll just say that we have one of the reasons I chose not to run for the leadership is that we really need to focus on the response to the United States right now. And you can see that the issue relating to internal trade, reducing barriers inside our own country to trade and commerce, is fundamentally important, especially at this time. And the Prime Minister has charged me with that responsibility as Minister of Internal Trade. And so that's what I'm focusing on. That's a response to the global crisis that we are in. The fact that all premiers and the federal government are at the table to have that conversation is fundamentally important. We're having an urgent meeting next week to hammer out some of the details relating to reducing interprovincial barriers to trade and commerce, and we will take it from there. The timeline is short, but the work is so important. So stay tuned on that. Thank you.
Why are you supporting Chrystia?
Look, Chrystia Freeland is the best person to take on Donald Trump. She's a fierce defender of Canada. She left a lucrative job in New York to come and fight a contested nomination, and then ran in a really hard by-election and won. And she's won every election since, and I really think it's important to understand caucus. And look, we need a leader who can hit the ground running on day one, no training wheels required, and that's Chrystia Freeland.
For me, Chrystia Freeland has the experience we need at this time. I was her parliamentary secretary when we did steel and aluminum tariffs, and I watched the way she handled that, and I had a huge privilege of working with her, so I've seen her up close and personal. I also, I think she has the grit and the fortitude, and I think she's able to do that. So I think our number one issue right now is Donald Trump. Number two issue is Canadian incompetence in the whole government system. I think she has an idea of what was wrong in the last government. She can fix some things.
Mr. Carney has a lot of support from ministers who have a lot of organization and fundraising experience who can really rally a lot of people.
I'm very concerned.
Do you have any concerns
about
about
issues
her on
like
that front, which doesn't have the same level of organizers and fundraisers from the minister's side, cabinet at least?
So I ran the ex officio campaign for Michael Ignatieff. We had 75% of the ex officios, all of those people, and we lost to Stefan Diaz. It doesn't mean a thing. Absolutely doesn't mean a thing.
And as well as in Brack.
People in Gatineau and across Canada are telling me they want a coherent vision for economic growth, one that supports opportunities for all Canadians in every corner of this country. I believe Mark Carney offers us the best hope.
So can you explain why most cabinet ministers are jettisoning their cabinet colleague Miss Freeland for Mr. Carney? Is it because people don't like her, or is it because she stuck the knife into Trudeau, or is it because she's running away from the record of the government?
Well, let me just say I have a profound respect for Chrystia Freeland and her contributions, and indeed her candidacy made mine a very tough decision. She is a strong woman. She has a very clear vision for the country as well, and I look forward to watching that unfold as well.
Would you run under Mrs. Freeland or Mr. Carney or Ms. Gould for that matter?
I am running in the next election in Gatineau.
Should Mr. Carney run for election whether he has the leader or not?
I'll let Mr. Carney speak to all of those plans, and I'm sure he will have answers for all of them.
He's in hiding right now.
He will have answers for all of those questions.
What do you think his hopes are against Pierre Poilievre? Because that's ultimately where this is heading.
Oh, I think Mr. Poilievre will be, who's a redoubtable debater, let's agree, and who's someone who's perfected the art of the quip and the one-liner. He's a tough opponent, but I think substance wins.
Yes. Carney, can you remind Freeland, for you, why Miss Freeland over Mr. Carney?
Well, I have a lot of respect for all of the candidates in the race, and including Mr. Carney. So for me, what Chrystia brings to the race is a number of different things. I've known her personally for a lot of years, and as a new member of caucus, as somebody that had questions, who was trying to find their way, I always found that Chrystia treated me like I was an equal. It didn't matter she was Deputy Prime Minister, she was Finance Minister, she was busy, she had senior positions in the government, she always had time for me. So on a personal level that mattered, but it became clear to me during the evolution of my relationship with her that she is somebody that understands Manitoba. She is somebody that has the scars to show what it means to win hard fights in the trenches. She's tough. We need someone right now who's going to have the ability to negotiate with the Americans in a way that defends the interests of Canada. And I think that Chrystia has that proven track record that is needed right now in order to defend those Canadian interests. So for all of those reasons, I've decided to lend my support to her. But as I said, this is not a matter of feeling as though the other candidates in the race have negatives that I'm concerned about. It's simply that in my mind, she is the best candidate.
Some members of caucus really don't like how Ms. Freeland resigned, and that it essentially led to a leadership race, and the Prime Minister saying he was going to resign because so much pressure built up. What do you say in response to how she handled that?
I think that Chrystia made a very difficult decision, as did many of us, myself included, that we felt as though there was a need for a change in the leadership at the top, and we all had different reasons for coming to that conclusion. I don't think that anyone, whether that be in Chrystia's office, Chrystia herself, the Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister's office, if they could go back, would want that to play out again in the way that it did, but we are where we are, and I'll leave it for my caucus colleagues to comment on whether or not they have concerns.
How is it, though, like as a member of caucus, Miss Freeland is now walking away from backtracking on promises that she stood up and full-throated defended as a minister and had all of you guys defend? I mean, is there not a tension there? Like how disavowing the things that she stood for 3 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago?
I think there's a recognition on the part of a lot of us that there are some policies that needed improvement and that there were some policies that upon the passage of time Canadians made clear to us were not palatable. I think that the carbon tax is an example of that. I actually don't believe so much that the emission reduction objectives and ambitions, for example, of the carbon tax is something that Canadians are against. I think where we as a government went wrong is that we failed in our communication of it from the start. We weren't very concise in helping Canadians understand why we believed it was an important policy. So the carbon tax, in large part because of the effectiveness of political opposition in the country, has become a non-starter. So to walk away from the carbon tax does not mean to walk away from important environmental policy. It simply means that there's a recognition that if you do not have the political support necessary from the people, then you aren't able to accomplish the benefits of those policies. Pardon me?
What about capital gains?
What about it?
Reportedly, Miss Freeland is preparing to say she's going to walk that back in reverse on that policy. That was a pretty big hallmark of the budget last year.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that the capital gains changes were brought in was because we were trying to find a way to finance some of the commitments that we had made. But I think that over time there was a realization that perhaps we need to dial back a little bit on some of that spending. And I think that there's a recognition that if we are in the process of tightening that fiscal belt and constraining things, that means that we don't have a necessity to find that revenue from other areas, which means that perhaps that capital gains tax change is not necessary as we pursue that different option.
Going into these meetings, what are your priorities? What do you want to push on the agenda?
It's always good to be in the room with colleagues, so I'm simply looking forward to hearing what my colleagues are hearing in their ridings, to having a conversation about the leadership race, and I think the primary thing we have to focus on is that we are united. Like I said a moment ago to your colleagues, each candidate in this leadership race brings something important. They have a unique perspective. There are different narratives in their public policy proposals that are going to be beneficial to the dialogue that we're having as a team. But ultimately, at the end of the day, regardless of who emerges as the leader, we're going to have to put all of that energy, all of that hard work, all of those good ideas together and emerge as a united caucus.
So you would run under any of the leadership candidates? You would run as an MP under the leadership of any of these candidates?
I don't think that any of the candidates are necessarily going to emerge as winners. If you're talking about whether it's Mark or Chrystia or Karina, as an example, absolutely. I am united behind whoever emerges. I've given my reasons for why I'm supporting Chrystia and why I think she's the best candidate, particularly as a Manitoba MP. But I have a lot of respect for Mark Carney, a lot of respect for Karina Gould. Whoever emerges as the leader will have my full support. Thanks, guys.
Well, for me, Christia's record of achievement speaks for itself. This is somebody who, in her private life, was a journalist and a managing editor, took on Putin. The KGB has a file about, how one determined person can change so much, and it's on her. And I've seen that same force and that same will as she fought for Canadians during NAFTA and other issues. So for me, who she is, her character makes it an easy choice.
You worry she's going to fall behind in the race because Carney's getting all the endorsements?
No, I think there's, Liberal Party members I'm talking to want a competitive race. They want to hear the different voices and the different ideas about the future of our party. So they're looking for this to be competitive, and they want to hear what all the candidates have to say. So this race is wide open, as it should be. It's going to be an exciting debate about the ideas and the future of this country. And I'm feeling a lot of excitement and in really a party that's invigorated.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
Why are you and many other ministers in your cabinet supporting
I think you guys would be tired of hearing of me this week.
No, I'm really not. For you, why do you think yourself and so many other ministers are supporting Mark Carney and not the former Deputy Prime Minister? Did something, like, what is it? Is it that people don't like her?
I can't speak on behalf of others. I can only speak for myself. My endorsement of Mr. Carney is because I think he's the best person to lead us into the next election and lead Canada in what's coming in front of us, whether it's negotiation with the new U.S. administration, developing, putting together, continuing the work we've done to transition our economy towards a 21st century economy. I think he's the best placed person. But
what has he told you personally? He's meeting with MPs today, and he hasn't come out with policies. So what has he been telling you about?
We've had some conversations, but I didn't have to speak with him to know what his vision is. I've been following his career for many years. We've worked together at the United Nations together, so I've known him and I trust him, and I have great faith in his abilities.
Karina Gould said that she won't get rid of the carbon tax, she would just freeze it. So what does that say, that you're the main defender of the carbon tax? You're going to back a candidate who's potentially going to get rid of it?
I haven't seen that comment from my colleague, Minister Gould. Thank you.
Any questions on the leadership race?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Who are you endorsing?
Well, I'm supporting Chrystia Freeland to be the leader of the party. Look, I believe that Chrystia brings tremendous experience. She listens, she cares about people, and she's very intelligent and strong. But especially now, when we have threats to our economy and our sovereignty posed by Donald Trump and by others, I think somebody like Chrystia Freeland brings the necessary experience. When Donald Trump was president the last time, she went up against Donald Trump and won. I think that's exactly the kind of leadership that we need now.
It's a moment in time where the candidates are all saying that Canadians have lost faith in the Liberal government. They don't trust them anymore. And Miss Freeland is out repudiating vocally promises that she was staunchly in favor of just 2 months ago. So how do you square that circle when you support her? I mean, she's saying now that the things they all asked you guys to run on and take to your constituents were actually terrible ideas.
Well, I don't think she said that, but what I do think what you're hearing from Ms. Freeland is the vision that she has for the country. I think that when you're a minister of the Crown, you're expected to carry out the decisions of the Prime Minister of the day. I think Madame Freeland is putting forward a vision for how she would, the policy she would put forward, how she would address the challenges facing Canadians if she were Prime Minister. I think that's what you're hearing.
Why are you supporting Mark Carney?
I'm endorsing Mark Carney because to me he's the right leader at this junction in our party and in our country to steer us through the turbulent times that we're facing economically. He's demonstrated that he's got the experience, and I also, having talked to him, he's got the kind of humble leadership that I appreciate in a leader.
In terms of your work as campaign co-chair, I'm wondering, is it difficult right now to try to organize a Liberal campaign without a leader at the top of it?
We see a regain of energy on the ground. What we see right now is Liberals signing up to choose the next leader, Liberals signing up to be volunteers, and we see a regain of momentum, I think, and as a co-chair, I see a lot of people calling up to be and want to run for us.
They want to run for you even if it's...
Absolutely, because Liberals are Liberals, and one thing that unites us right now is making sure that we're defending Canadian values and Canadian economy to Trump's administration and to eventually a Poilievre administration that wouldn't be good for Canada.
Are you going to stay neutral?
Sure.
English?
To you?
Yes.
To where?
In English, I think in French you had mentioned that you might want to run to become mayor. Can you tell us that again?
I've been called a lot. There's been a lot of conversation around that, and what I can say today that there's a real interest for me. I want to see what that means and take the time to reflect on it and make a decision very soon on that. Thank you.